Hello, class. Welcome to REL 140 Old Testament Survey. This is week 7, distributed on March the 6th, 2023. And we are on the 6th lecture, but we had one extra class because of the midterm. So we have one lecture this week, one next week, and then in 2 weeks will be the final exam. So hopefully you'll all be ready for that. We'll go ahead and get started in just 1 minute. I want to remind you also about the term paper that's also due the 10th week. So you've got this week and 2 more weeks to complete that. Um, if you have any questions about that, let me know. Or if you want to go ahead and submit it, I'll go ahead and accept it whenever. But you need to do that to get the most points in the class. It is still possible to pass the class without doing that. But if you want the best possible grades, you do that. That is required. I do give lots of extra credit questions on the test as well as during the class, so you probably noticed that. Um, so I've given you the best possible chance to get a good grade in the class. Hopefully you are taking advantage of that. And I'm working on grading the midterms. If you want to know your grade, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be just submitting the final grades to the school in a few weeks. All right, let's go ahead and begin the lesson for today. And here are our notes. So again, this is lecture 6, and we're covering chapter 14 of the textbook. We're starting with chapter 14, which is about Proverbs, how to develop wisdom. Again, we are finishing, or we are continuing with the third part of the Hebrew Bible, which is the writings. And Proverbs is one of the writings. We call this wisdom literature, or it's one of the books that's part of the wisdom literature. So the plot, Proverbs, is the learner slowly gains the knowledge and experience necessary to become a wise person. Let's turn to the introduction. Proverbs deals with practical questions of how we should live in everyday circumstances, developing character that pleases the Lord, and relating well to others. While wisdom is difficult to attain, it is available to all who will learn from life. It is important to learn how to interpret proverbs correctly. A proverb is a comparison drawn from life, which attempts to show what life is like. Proverbs state the normal rules of correct or incorrect behavior, but they should not be seen as absolute promises. For example, one proverb states that diligent people are rich. While normally those who are industrious have what they need, some people work hard yet are poor. Proverbs belongs to the conservative side of wisdom literature, setting patterns that lead to success. Originally, proverbs may have been recited in families. During the time of the kings, wisdom teachers shared proverbs and other types of wisdom literature with the people, possibly even setting up schools to teach wisdom to civil servants or other interested persons. Due to their wide background, the lessons in Proverbs speak to numerous life situations, instructing leaders and followers, rich and poor, young and old. The material in Proverbs was composed and gathered over a long period of time. Since Solomon is linked to the book, some of the Proverbs date at least from after 950 BC, though Solomon may have recited Proverbs even older. Men of Hezekiah, who ruled 715 through 687 BC, collected some of Solomon's Proverbs. Other proverbs are probably even later. Therefore, most scholars date the book's contents approximately 1000 through 400 BC. While it is difficult to divide Proverbs into sections, the first several chapters clearly stress pursuing wisdom and avoiding foolishness. The remaining chapters change subjects rapidly and seemingly at random. However, there are some unifying factors, such as headings that provide major emphases. Each section moves the learner closer to the goal of wisdom. Like all wisdom literature, Proverbs teaches us how to live. Knowledge begins the process. However, wisdom only results when a learner applies wisdom teachings to life in the way God commands. Let's look at Proverbs chapters 1 through 9, choosing wisdom, avoiding foolishness. Just as in a new venture, choices and plans made in the first stages determine success in learning to live wisely. Thus, learners must make decisions such as how to view themselves, whom to follow, and how to sustain interest in the quest for wisdom. The introduction to Proverbs describes the purpose for which Solomon's Proverbs have been preserved to make readers discerning, righteous, and just. Learners should begin the process in the fear of the Lord, admitting that God alone possesses perfect wisdom, and thus respecting Yahweh and asking Him for help in learning. Individuals who fear the Lord must then choose between traditional values and those of brash sinners, and between wisdom and foolishness. Many benefits come to those who choose wisdom. God will gladly grant them wisdom, and they will understand justice, discretion, and the necessity of avoiding wicked company. Wisdom is able to dispense such blessings because she was with God from the beginning of time and has been used by God in creating and sustaining the world. So wisdom is personified as a woman in the book of Proverbs, known as Lady Wisdom, or by oftentimes by the Greek name Sophia. People who choose foolishness risk becoming thieves and adulterers, make poor business decisions, and become lazy, proud, and divisive. Foolish young men are also likely to desire wicked women. Several texts warn against sexual sins, one of which gives an illustration of an adulterous woman seducing a foolish um, young man who becomes caught in a trap that will cost him his life. This scene could have been avoided by a wise man who would not have desired such a woman or gone near her. Given wisdom's blessings and foolishness's pitfalls, the young and inexperienced should choose wisdom. These choices made, beginners can take the next steps in learning how to live. We'll turn now to Proverbs 10:1 through 22:16, becoming a righteous child. Proverbs next announces the next stages of the quest for wisdom. Now, a new set of Solomon's Proverbs explains how learners can truly please their parents. Each proverb intends to build the young seeker's character and reinforce proper behavior in older persons. Several traits appear repeatedly in this section, described in antithetical poetry that contrasts two opposites. The section encourages learners to work hard, guard their mouths, and store up knowledge to dispense acceptable words at the proper time. Further, learners should strive for righteousness in every area of their lives. The righteous are guided by humility, integrity, and the knowledge that riches will not matter on Judgment Day. Righteous persons accept advice about life's crucial decisions. Righteous persons can combat pride by caring for the poor. Homes will survive when fear of God and quiet, non abusive words abound. Words of wisdom will instruct family members. God will tear down the homes of the proud and corrupt, but he will establish those who follow righteousness and fear of Yahweh. Pride can also be overcome through absolute commitment to Yahweh. The righteous must allow God to weigh their motives and submit their plans to God for approval. Those who reject pride and divisiveness honor their parents and take significant strides toward wisdom. Developing learners must not cut themselves off from their community, thereby rejecting their heritage. Those who spurn counsel so they can speak their uninformed opinions are fools, and punishment can be their only reward. Other sins may tempt the righteous, such as drunkenness, quarreling, excessive leisure, unjust gain, gossip, revenge, and violence, and excessive pleasure. The wise must resist such temporary benefits for enduring character. Righteous children seek permanent victories, which can only come from God. Those who accept wise instruction make progress in righteousness. Now we turn to Proverbs 22:17 through 24:34, sustaining righteousness. Proverbs anticipates the possibility that many people will serve God for a time only to fall back into foolishness later. Therefore, it addresses individuals who have become established in life. This section begins with warnings not to oppress the poor or deny them justice, to shun hot-tempered companions, to practice economic common sense, such as refusing to guarantee others' debts, and to maintain traditional land boundaries. Those who stay consistent and become skilled in their work will be honored. The wise parent warns that many lusts and jealousies will tempt the learner, such as power and luxury, excessive effort to acquire wealth, friendship friendship with the wicked, rich and fools, envy, hedonism, sensuality, and strong drink. Wisdom's path seems long and hard. Those who build their lives on it, however, find nourishment for their souls. Through justice, honesty, and hard work, people can sustain their righteousness in the difficult middle years of the quest for wisdom. We'll turn now to Proverbs chapters 25 through 29, becoming a righteous leader. Many of the proverbs in these chapters instruct leaders and those who deal with leaders. The opening verses describe how kings enjoy searching for truth and quickly tire of wicked and egocentric persons. Proverbs now seems to address those who have achieved some success. Community leaders must have a proper attitude as learners characterized by humility. A humble person possesses security and confidence. Choosing good companions and promoting worthy people are also important for leaders. Close, honest friends sharpen one another's character. Leaders have specific duties to fulfill. They must take good care of their own business interests and work toward their entire community's well-being. Wise leaders keep the law, oppose sinners, and believe that whoever trusts the Lord is safe. However, this advanced stage is not easy. Few people can accept responsibility for their community's welfare and maintain their own integrity. But wisdom and fear of God will lead to success since some must become leaders. We'll turn now to Proverbs chapter 30, dealing with pride. Throughout Proverbs, pride has been declared the deadly enemy of wisdom. In this chapter, Agur declares the agony of his own stupidity as a warning against pride. He asks God to give him a balanced life, which will lead to peace instead of turmoil. He also offers several numerical sayings that prove his need for more learning, describing a number of things he does not understand. Of course, Agur has been crafty, claiming to know little, yet demonstrating tremendous insight. Thus, he seems to caution lesser but more prideful individuals to check their egos. And we'll turn now to Proverbs 31, choosing a life partner. Proverbs also consistently cautions learners to avoid sexual sins. In this chapter, Lemuel receives advice from his mother. She tells him not to give his strength to women and also instructs him what sort of wife to marry. Her comments set high standards for women and also prod men to become suitable husbands for worthy wives. An excellent wife is difficult to find and extremely valuable to her husband. She works cheerfully and diligently in the home and in the community. The woman is a perfect contrast to the wicked, adulterous woman described earlier in Proverbs. The first woman ruins several households, while the latter benefits all. The wise man chooses a virtuous woman for a life partner. All right, let's look at the conclusion. Proverbs carefully leads readers in a seminar on how to live. It guides seekers through the various stages of acquiring wisdom, always identifying dangers, yet never making the process seem impossible. However difficult the task may be, wise persons will determine to learn to fear God, embrace humility, accept discipline, and thus develop character. Let's turn now to chapter 15, which is about Ruth, how to survive personal difficulties. All right, the plot. Naomi loses her husband and sons, which places her in a seemingly impossible financial situation. She is rescued by her own cunning, Boaz's kindness, and the beauty and industriousness of her Moabite daughter in law, Ruth. Let's turn to the introduction. Several Old Testament stories highlight life's difficulties. Ruth presents a story of two women who encounter personal setbacks through no fault of their own. As widows, they are physically, financially, and emotionally vulnerable. Yet these women prove that they are not weak or without resources. To appreciate this story, it is important to know a few ancient customs. First, widows were to be provided for by their sons, so it was important for women to bear sons to support them in their old age. Second, if a widow had no son but could still bear children, the deceased husband's brother was supposed to produce a son with her. The son would belong to the dead man uh, and then would care for the mother. Such individuals were known as kinsman redeemers. Third, land owned by the dead man could be purchased by his family to keep the property from passing from the family's possession. Fourth, it was rare for foreigners to adopt the religion of another nation. Ruth occurs during the time of the judges when chaos reigns. No one knows when the book was written, but it must have been after the time of David, since it mentions him. The era in which they lived makes the story of Naomi and Ruth even more remarkable, since they survive during one of Israel's most difficult periods. All right, we'll turn to Ruth chapter 1, Naomi's grief. The book's opening verses announce the problem the book must solve, as if living in chaotic times were not bad enough. A famine arises during the time of the judges, and an Israelite family is forced to go live in Moab. The family includes Elimelech, the husband, Naomi, the wife, and two sons named Mahlon and Chilion. The husband dies, and the sons marry Moabite women named Orpah and Ruth. Then the sons die. Thus, there are three widows and no men to father more sons. Orpah and Ruth can remarry, but Naomi has no such hope. She decides to return to her home in Bethlehem and live among her people. Naomi advises Orpah and Ruth to go back to Moab and search for new husbands. Though they both initially say they will accompany Naomi, her insistence convinces Orpah to return. Yet Ruth continues to cling to Naomi and, in effect, converts to Israelite culture and to the worship of Yahweh. The women travel to Bethlehem, and Naomi laments what has befallen her. However, the beginning of barley harvest brings a new development to the women's story. Let's turn to Ruth chapter 2, Glimpses of Hope. Ruth decides to provide food for herself and Naomi by gathering grain in the field of a man named Boaz. This is a custom allowed to poor people. And Boaz, who is a relative of Naomi's dead husband, Boaz notices Ruth and hears how she has cared for Naomi. So he tells his servants to protect her and leave extra grain for her. At the end of the day, Ruth reports to Naomi and explains Boaz's kindness to her. Naomi identifies Boaz as a kinsman redeemer. She counsels Ruth to continue working in Boaz's fields. We'll turn now to Ruth chapter 3:1 through 4:17. Solution to the problem. Naomi now attempts to repay Ruth's loyalty to her by helping Ruth find a new husband, which will bring security to Naomi as well as to Ruth. Naomi notes that Boaz is a likely candidate. To encourage Boaz, Naomi tells Ruth to bathe, put on perfume, and dress in her best clothes, and then sneak to the threshing floor where Boaz will spend the night, uncover his feet, and lie next to him. Ruth does as Naomi suggests. Boaz is aroused from sleep during the night, discovers a woman, and asks her name. Her response amounts to a proposal of marriage, focusing on him as a kinsman redeemer. Boaz is delighted and he promises to marry her, though he must first deal with another man who is a closer relative to Naomi. Ruth leaves just before daybreak to return to Naomi, while Boaz goes to the city gate of the place to conduct business. He gathers the other potential kinsman redeemer along with 10 witnesses and begins to negotiate for Ruth. First, he notes that Naomi must sell her husband's land so it will not leave his family's possession. Second, he informs the man that whoever buys the land must also shelter Ruth and father a child by her. The man cannot afford the land and woman, though he initially agrees to buy the land, so he allows Boaz to redeem them both. Third, Boaz announces he will purchase the land and Ruth. With all obstacles removed, Boaz and Ruth are accepted and blessed by the community. They marry and soon have a son, giving Naomi and Ruth the security they lost at the beginning of the book. Thus, there is a happy ending to the story. And now we'll look at Ruth 4:18 through 22, the appendix. The marriage of Boaz and Ruth has great long-term impact in Israel. Their son Obed will become David's grandfather. God not only blesses Ruth with present security, but he also gives Ruth permanent prominence in Israel's history, which will eventually impact all who trust in Jesus Christ, because Jesus is a descendant of David. And the conclusion. These women survived their personal tragedies by remaining faithful to each other, trusting in God, who provided Boaz to care for them, and using their own wits and ingenuity to achieve their desired results. They are the kind of wise persons described in Proverbs. The fact that God used Ruth to help produce David shows that even seemingly obscure persons can be used for eternal glory. Okay, now we turn to chapter 16, which is about the Song of Songs, how to enjoy love. The plot: the lovers praise one another, seek time together, and regret all time apart. Let's look at the introduction. The Song of Songs rejoices in the beauty and joy of love. The book is a series of love poems set in a dramatic framework. The two lovers delight in each other, and their doing so instructs readers to enjoy and express their appreciation for their own beloveds or spouses. The book is also known as the Song of Solomon. It has stirred controversy over the centuries, as scholars have debated how to interpret it because of its theme and contents. It never mentions God's name. Additionally, its love poetry becomes explicit at times. Since neither of these facts initially seems spiritual or edifying, many have seen the book as an allegory, meaning a symbol, with the male lover, who perhaps is supposed to be Solomon, but this male lover representing God or Christ for Christians, and the female beloved representing Israel, or again, the church for Christians. Thus, their love demonstrates God's love for his people. Though they ease embarrassment over the book's non-religious nature, such interpretations are unnecessary, given that the writings section explains how to live and discusses a wider range of life situations. It is appropriate that it also talk about human sexuality, a subject that has been of interest to people in all times. It is best to read these poems as statements about the excitement of romantic love. It is impossible to determine when or by whom the book was written. It seems to suggest Solomon is the author. Perhaps he wrote it himself, or someone else wrote it for one of his marriages. And we know from earlier that Solomon had 1,000 wives, so some of them probably had important marriage ceremonies. Though the exact setting cannot be recovered, the general life situation is clear. Two people in love long to be together, probably a bride and bridegroom. The story can be divided by the three times that expressions of love and longing to be together overlap. All right, let's look first at Song of Songs 1:1 through 2:2. First, expressions of love. Both lovers announce the other's attractiveness. She desires his kisses, but wonders if her own skin makes her unattractive to him. However, he calls her the most beautiful of women, compliments her face and eyes, and says their relationship will endure. Now we'll turn to Song of Songs 2:3 through 3:11. The desire to be together. People in love want to see each other. The woman reflects on her lover's strength and love and feels faint. When he was gone, she sought him, found him, and would not let him go. Now she waits again. She sees Solomon coming, carried on a chair, ready to marry her. Patience will soon be rewarded. Now we turn to Song of Songs 4:1 through 5:1. More statements of affection. At this point, the man describes his lover's beauty moving down her body. That's describing various parts of her body. To him, her love is better than wine, and he wants to enjoy its fruits. Next, Song of Songs 5:2 through 6:3. Further longing for love. The woman awakens and hears her lover knocking at the door. She goes to the door only to find him gone. She looks for him in the streets and is struck by a watchman. Desperate, she asks the city's women, the chorus in the book of Song of Songs. She asks them to help her find him. Naturally, the women need a description of her lover, so she describes him from head to toe. When the women ask where to look, she replies that he must be working and she wants to be with him. Next, we turn to Song of Songs 6:4 through 7:9. Final praises for her beauty. He desires her presence too. Thus, he details her beauty again, once more focusing on her eyes and face. Even other women praise her beauty and purity. All who meet her want another look at her. At last, the man speaks of her whole body. To him, she has no physical faults, and her personality is pleasing. Now we turn to Song of Songs 7:10 through 8:14. Both lovers now express their need for lasting companionship and love. Responding to his praises, she tells him she will give him her love in the countryside. The woman wishes they were considered family so she could be with him always and they could share love at any time. The man pledges that they will always be together. She must not become jealous of other women or doubt his love to her. He describes the power of love while she asks him to hurry to her side and wants his promises to become reality. All right, let's look at the conclusion. The Song of Songs may not teach great theological truths, but it does address some basic human emotions. It demonstrates that love should be expressed verbally as well as physically. It also shows the wonder and beauty of love without discussing rules and warnings. Love is kept simple and sensual. Lovers who imitate the book's lovers gain spontaneity and joy and learn how to grow old in love without the love growing old. All right, now we'll turn to chapter 17, Ecclesiastes, how to search for meaning in life. Um, the plot. Koheleth searches for life's meaning. He finds all of life's activities empty, yet he discovers the value of fearing God. Let's look at the introduction. Proverbs, Ruth, and the Song of Songs are basically positive books. Therefore, readers may misunderstand their message and think these books present life as a simple sequence of causes and effects. Ecclesiastes, along with Job, balances Proverbs in the Old Testament wisdom literature. It poses relevant and realistic questions about the meaning of life. It does so in an almost totally negative tone, forcing readers to decide what is positive about life. While its ultimate conclusions do not conflict with Proverbs, it seeks to correct all who may think the path to wisdom is easy. Including these different yet complementary perspectives allows the Old Testament to offer a realistic and comprehensive view of life. Okay, so we'll need to take a quick break from here and we'll pick up in just 1 minute.